This- Okay, Bez Hashem, today's daf is Sechta Bava Basra Daf Kuf Mem Aleph, and we are beginning by the Gemara. Let's just review the Mishnah. The Mishnah was discussing a tumtum. A tumtum is somebody you don't know if it's a male or a female. Okay, it has a membrane covering its erva, and so we don't know what the opinion of our Mishnah, but there are two ways to look at that. One way to look at it is a suffix. You don't know if it's a male or female. But then there is an opinion that a tumtum is like a new type of gender. There's male, female, and there's a tumtum. And there is an opinion that way. So we're trying to figure out what our Mishnah's opinion is regarding this tumtum. The Mishnah said that if a person died, so that he doesn't, the tumtum doesn't inherit, and the boys say, "Hey, you're not a boy. You can't be part of the estate." So they push him to the girls. So that's what the Mishnah says. So it seems that, and the girls obviously get less than the boys. So, he gets always if you're not sure what he is, a male or female, he's probably going to get like a male. So let's read the Gemara. When the inheritance happens, you push away the tumtum and you say that, hey, you're not a male. So v'shakel kabas, the Gemara's question is, so you're going to tell me that this tumtum will take inheritance like a girl? So if you're not sure, you give him the lesser of the money. But that's not true. Al-Katan is safer, but the Mishnah says in the end of the Mishnah, Yolda tumtum eina noitel. If a person gives birth to a tumtum, doesn't take anything, right? Yolda tumtum eina noitel. This is regarding a guy who's very excited and he has some money. So he says, if I have a boy, I want to give $100. If I have a girl, I want to give $200. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. So the Mishnah says that if he had a tumtum, that child doesn't get anything because it's not a boy, it's not a girl. Wait a second, if you're telling me that it's at least the minimum of the two, he should take at least 100. Maybe he's a boy. So what is a tumtum? Amar Abaye, so Abaye says you misread the beginning of the Mishnah. Our Mishnah holds that a tumtum is not a boy, not a girl. It's a third gender. It's a burial b'fnei atzmai. The boys push him to the girls push him to the boys. Ve'ein loy, and he takes nothing. Rava says you do push him away, and he's entitled to something. That's the beginning of the Mishnah. And the Seifa, the end of the Mishnah, is another author. Yes, the Seifa of the Mishnah, Asin Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, goes according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The Tanya we learned to the Brisa, Yolda Tumtim Vadreganis, Rav Shimon Gamliel, Oima, Ein Kedusha Chal Aleim. This is talking about Bechor. I'm not going to go into it, but the point of this Brisa, the point of this Mishnah or Brisa, is that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is of the opinion. He's the author of the opinion that says a tumtum is a unique gender. So the beginning of the Mishnah will view a tumtum as a suffix, not a male, not a female, but it's one of them. You don't know which one. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, he's the author of the end of the Mishnah, and he is the one that holds that a tumtum is a beria b'fnei atzmai. He's like a new type of gender. And therefore, it doesn't, according to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, it's not a boy, it's not a girl, it's just an it. Meisvei, so the Gemara asks a question against Abaya. Let's see what Abaya said. A whole Mishnah holds that a tumtum is beria b'fnei atzmai. Tumtum, the Brisa says, Tumtum Yorish Keben, Venizin Kabas. Sometimes a tumtum will get inheritance like a boy and will get sustenance, it will get food like a girl. Now, obviously, this Brisa makes sense according to Rava. Bishlam and Rava, according to Rava, this Brisa makes sense. It depends. Yorish Keben, sometimes it takes like a boy because when there's very little assets and the girls are taking everything and the boys are left with a little bit. So then you take the lower. Then the girls say, you're not part of us. You're a boy. Beniz and Kabas, sometimes it takes food like a girl. When is that? There's a lot of assets in the estates, and so only a little bit of the assets is set aside for food for the girls. So the boys will say, "You're not a boy, you're a girl." So this brisa seems to hold that a tumtum is sometimes viewed as a boy and sometimes viewed as a girl. We go to Kuf Mem Aleph Aleph. Let's go. I'm sorry. Okay. Kuf Mem Aleph Aleph and Ella Abaya, but according to Abaya, my knees and kabas. According to Abaya, what does it mean that that he sometimes gets food like a girl? Abaya said that it's not a girl, it's not a boy. The whole brisa doesn't make sense according to Abaya. It shouldn't get anything. Ol tamech. So the Gemara Abaya will say, according to Rava, it's not 100% correct. Ma yorish keben. How does if Rava understand the brisa to mean that it takes always inherits like a boy, but that's not an absolute case. Sometimes he becomes a girl. Ella, the brisa is a little off a little bit. Royal yerush ve'ein. You could always view the brisa that it's a boy that if it was a known boy, it would potentially inherit, but it doesn't. It doesn't get because it's a third type of gender. It is potentially could get sustenance and it doesn't get sustenance. So Abaye just wings his way into this brisa, which is say that it doesn't mean that the tumtum is a boy and sometimes is a girl. It means if we knew for a fact that it was a boy, it would be like a boy. And if we knew for a fact it would be a girl, it would be like a girl. But now that it's nothing, it gets nothing. Now that it's a third type, it gets nothing. Okay. Let's go on to the next piece of Gemara, a new piece of Gemara. The Mishnah said that if a person said, a fascinating piece of Gemara, the Mishnah said that a man is very happy, his wife is giving birth, and he says, if my wife gives birth to a boy, I'm giving the boy $100. And if a wife gives birth to a girl, I'm going to give her $200. So it seems that it's nicer for a man to have a boy. Lemembra, do you want to say the basa difale meben? It's better for a man to have a boy, a daughter, than a girl. But that's not true. If you have a choice, Omar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, "Kol she'einu maniach ben liyarshoy." If you don't have a boy, if you left this world and you only had girls, Hakadosh Baruch Hu Molei Olav Ever. God is like, so to speak, angry at you. I mean, what this means is even though you don't really have a choice, a person should continue to try to have children until he has a boy. Because if you leave the world and you don't have a boy to inherit you, God is angry at you. Shnema, va'avartem es nachlasoi lebitoi. God has a rat. The Torah says that if you don't have a boy, you transfer the inheritance to the daughter. That's an unusual word, ha'abartem. It should say, I give the inheritance to the daughter. So what does it say, ha'abartem? Ve'in ha'avora el evra. The word ha'avora could also sometimes means rage. Shnema yom evra hayomahu. In Sefania, the word evra means anger. So God is angry, so to speak, when you transfer your inheritance to your daughter. So we see that it's important to have a girl. So how does the Mishnah say that a man is so happy to have a boy, he says, I'm going to give $100. But if I have this girl, I want to give her $200. What is the Mishnah implying? That it's better to have a girl? Answers the Gemara, le'inyan Yerusha, if when you're dealing with inheritance, ben adif lei, ben adif lei, then it's better to have a boy, because the assets and the property remain in the family legacy because the boy keeps it. But if it was a girl, then you're right. Then it's the trend. There's transfer of property to another family, so it's better to have a boy. But that's not what our mission is talking about. Linear havocha. If you want somebody to have more cash at hand, you want your daughter to have more cash than your boys, because your boys will figure it out. They'll go collecting in shul. They have no problem. But for the girl, it's very embarrassing for your daughter to go collecting. So you would rather have cash more given over to the girl. And that's what our mission is discussing, giving over cash. So it's better there. He's more happier to give more cash to the girl than to the boy.
It doesn't. Why are we assuming that this is his only child? He could have, in this case, 4 boys, and he's saying, if it's a girl, I'll give her this much money, because he just wants a girl too.
Yeah, it could be, but I done Mishnah is teaching you something. I don't know what it would teach you, but here, look at the Mishnah. If my wife gives birth to a boy, I want him to take mana, which is $100. Yolda zachar yitamana. If she gives birth to nekeva, Messiah. So it's probably he's excited on his first child. So he's so excited that he wants to just open an account in his name or her name and and fund it. So he wants to fund with cash more to the girl than to the boy. And that the Gemara says, yes, when it comes to cash, you want your girl to have money in case there's a shortage. You're not your boys will figure it out. They'll be able to collect in shul, but a girl
Okay.
cannot.
Okay.
Shmuel gives another answer in the Mishnah. The truth is, our Mishnah is talking about the firstborn. It's better to have a firstborn girl than to have a boy. And that's why he's more excited to have a girl than the boy. Why is it more better to have a girl than a boy as your firstborn? If you have a girl first, it's a good sign for the boys. What does it mean? It's a good sign for the rest of the family if you have an oldest daughter. Others explain the marbe lachoy. When you have an oldest daughter, so she helps raise the other brothers. So that's always good to have a daughter first. And that's true. The Ika the Ami, others say it's interesting. The reason why it's nice to have a daughter first, people are not going to give you an ayin hara. Because if a person has a boy first, could lead to an ayin hara. But when you have a girl first, so he says, oh, yeah, wait till he starts paying for seminary and paying for a wedding. So they don't give him an ayin hara so much. So it's better to have a girl first. Amar Rav Chizda said, "Ulidi benosan adifali b'bnei." My experience, I had I had better daughters than my sons. Apparently, according to the way Rashbam learns, some of his sons were nifter at a young age, and Rav Chizda had more luck with his daughters, so to speak. The Ibaya same, if you want, I could tell you that our Mishnah, who says it's better to give more cash to a girl, is Hamani. There's actually a Tanaic opinion to our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehudi, the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, "Hey, Rabbi Yehuda, which Rabbi Yehuda is the author of our Mishnah that you give more money to a girl?" Ilem is Rabbi Yehuda Bakoil. Is it this Rabbi Yehuda who translated the word Bakoil? What translation did he give? Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. In next week's Sedra, it says, Vashem Berech as Avraham Bakoil. God blessed Avraham with everything. He was old, his wife died, but he had everything. Rameir, what does it mean? Bakoil, he had everything. Shloi hoyloi bas. He had no daughters, so he didn't have to worry about marrying off a daughter because no one would marry her. It was hard enough to find a shidduch for Yitzchak, but for a daughter, it would have been, pardon me, it would have been harder. So that's what Rameir says. Rabbi Yehuda says, actually, it's just the opposite. Bas. He did have a daughter, Ubakol Shema, and her name was Bakol. He named his daughter Bakol. So the Gemara says, Amar Deshamat Leila Rabbi Yehuda. When did Rabbi Yehuda say he named his daughter Bakol? So Rabbi Yehuda seems to say that it's nice to the prize that we say that Avraham Avinu was blessed with everything is because he had a daughter. So the Gemara says, true. What do you hear from a Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda only tells you that Avram Avinu had a daughter. Avram was missing a daughter. He had a boy Yitzchak and he had a daughter Bakhoil. But you don't see from Rabbi Yehuda's opinion the adifim ben mishamet. Do you see that it's better to have a girl over a boy? That you don't see that from Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. So you can't bring that proof to Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda is the author of our Mishnah, that it's better to have a girl than a boy. Ela ha Rabbi Yehuda, it's the following Rabbi Yehuda. Hani, we learned in the Brisa, mitzvah lozin es abonis. It's a mitzvah to feed your daughters. The kal v'choyma lebanim, and it's the aski batara de Reb Meir. It's really a person. I'm not sure if a father has an obligation to give his children food, right? Maybe up to a certain age, but after a certain age, it's only a mitzvah. So it's only a mitzvah to give your children food. So up to Rabbi Meir says it's a mitzvah to feed your daughters, and of course it's a mitzvah to feed your boys because they're busying themselves learning Torah. The Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says mitzvah lazan is a bonim. It's a mitzvah to give uh, food to your boys. The it's certainly better to give the more certain to give food to your daughters because they shouldn't be embarrassed, going around with the collection plate. So that's the opinion of Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about the shame of a girl going out and collecting for food. Therefore, our Mishnah is of the opinion, is the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore the guy in the Mishnah, the example in the Mishnah, is actually giving more money for his wife giving birth to a girl than to a boy. Now the Gemara just asks a question on a brisa. Elo Tanya, we learned in a brisa. What did we learn in a brisa? Yolda Zachar Nekeva. If a man gives birth to a Zachar Nekeva, so he gave birth to a boy and a girl. Hazocha noitel shisha didranim, v'anekeva noitel sheni didranim. The boy will take 150, and the girl will take $50. Now, B'mai, what is that brisa talking about? It's a cryptic brisa. What's the scenario? Amar Avashi Amrisa Shmaitza Kamir of Kahana. I said this brisa in front of Rav Kahana, and he explained the brisa b'Mesoris, a guy who changes, he pivots. The Amar, he said, Zachat Chila, if my wife gives birth to a boy first, Messiah, I'm giving 200 to that kid. Nekeva Acharav, and then Veloy Klum. And then if she gives birth to a female afterwards, that daughter's not getting anything. Nekeva Chila, but if she gives birth to a female first, Mana, I'm giving $100. Zacha Achre, but when she has a boy afterwards, Mana will also get $100. So he's committing $200, but either he's giving it totally to the Zachar if it's born first, or if the Nekeva was born first, then he's splitting it, 100 to each. The older Zachar Nekeva, and the wife gave birth to a male and female. You don't know which came out first. Did the male come out first or the female? So that's the shot in the brisa. Zachar, the boy, shachal mana, mamana shach. Either way, he's getting 100 because even if the nekeva came out first, he's still supposed to get 100. And if he's the first one, if he came out first, he's supposed to get 200. So idach mana, the next 100, have a mama namutal b'safi v'cholkim. That mana you split in half. That 100 you split half. So you give 50 to the male and you give 50 to the female. So the male is going to get 150 and the female is going to get 50. Now, another brisa. We're trying to make sense of another brisa. Haditanya, we learned to the brisa. Yolda Zachar Nekeva. Man gives birth to a male and a female. Ein le'alimana, he only has to give $100. How do you explain that brisa? Amar Ravina says, B'mevasreini. He's not giving, it's talking about he's giving the one that's giving him the news that money. It's not he's giving it to the child. He's giving it to the mavaser, the one that's the telling over the news, the good news that he had a child. Now, what's the case? The Tanya, we learned to the Brisa, we go to Amud Beis. Kamavasreini, b'ma nifta rachma shel ishti. Whoever tells me what my first child is, I'm im zachar. If it turns out he tells me I had a boy, itamana, I'm giving him $100. Yolda zachar, itamana. If a guy tells him, oh, your wife just gave birth to a boy, he gets $100. If his statement was in the kevis mana, if he says if my wife gives birth to a girl, I'm giving $100 to the one that tells it to me. Yolda nekeva, neitel mana. If somebody tells him, oh, your wife gave birth to a girl, that person takes a mana. Yolda zachar nekeva, but let's say the guy comes and says, oh, by the way, your wife gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. He's only committing $100. That doesn't mean he's going to give $200. His only commitment was $100. Says the Gemara, he didn't say anything what would be the din by a zachar nekeva. Perhaps maybe he wants to give 100 to each. And says the Gemara, it's talking about a case where he specifically said that if the guy tells me I had twins and it's a boy and a girl, the talebearer is going to only get $100. So that's the case of where a talebearer is only going to get $100. El lemute mai. So the Gemara asks, when wouldn't the talebearer get anything? And says the Gemara, lamute nefel. If he tells over that your wife miscarried, so there, even though his wife maybe Maybe it's not a Bechor, his wife actually gave birth, but it was a miscarriage. So then the talebearer will not get anything. Because when he said, whoever tells me my wife gave birth, he meant to say a healthy child, but not something that dies soon after birth. Okay, new story. Who do Amalei Ledvise? A man says to his wife, "Nechasei lahai abris." I'm giving my possessions to the baby that's in your stomach. Amar Afhuna have Mizaka Uber. You're transferring the ownership of your possessions to the embryo. If you transfer ownership of your possessions to an embryo, the embryo it doesn't acquire it because it's not a living thing. It's living inside the woman's stomach. So the Gemara asks, but our Mishnah says it does. Eisler Rav Nachman Rav Huna. Rav Nachman asked the question to Rav Huna. Our Mishnah seems to say something else. Ha'omer, whoever says Im Yolda Ishti Zachar Yitul Mana, if my wife gives birth to a boy, he should take a mana. Yolda Zachar Neitul Mana, and the boy and his wife gave birth to a boy, he takes 100. So he committed to give his boy that's going to be born 100. And therefore the Mishnah says you have to follow through. So you see, you could transfer money to a baby that's to an embryo because you committed 100 a mana to an embryo. And the Mishnah says you have to follow through. Malay, so Rav Huna said to Rav Nachman, Mishnah Seini Any Day Mishan. I don't know who the author of our Mishnah. It makes no sense, our Mishnah. You can't transfer ownership to something that's not born yet. So the Gemara says, wait a minute. Maybe our author of our Mishnah is Rav Meir. Let Rav Huna say to Rav Nachman that the author of our Mishnah is Rav Meir. Our famous Rav Meir, the Amar, who said, a person could acquire something that didn't exist yet. For example, you have a date tree, and you can say, the fruits that come out of this date tree, I'm buying it right now. So even though the dates are not there, you actually acquired those dates. So that's the opinion of Rameir. So maybe our author of our Mishnah is Rameir, that it works. So the Gemara says the author of our opinion of our Mishnah cannot be Rameir. When did Rameir say you could acquire something that's not in this world yet? Something is in this world. The tree is here. It's just the fruits of the tree is not here yet. The dava she'eni ba'olam, but an embryo that's not here at all in the world. Mi shamatle. Did Rab Meir say that you could transfer ownership of your assets to an embryo that's not even here? Nothing is here. The tree is not here. I mean, the kid's not here. It wasn't born yet. Says the Gemara. The Gemara says v'lei melei Rab Yosi the Ama Uba Kani. Let us say that the author of Mishnah is Rab Yosi, who said an Uber could acquire. The Tanah we learned in the Mishnah, Uber Paisel Beinamachal de Rabbi Yosi. In that Mishnah over there, which is talking about an embryo acquiring avodim, right? The Mishnah over there is discussing an embryo inheriting slaves from his father that just died. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Yosi says he could inherit. Whatever the topic of that Mishnah is, Rabbi Yosi is of the opinion, is saying that a embryo could acquire something in an inheritance. So maybe the author of our Mishnah that says you can transfer ownership of something of a mana to an embryo is Rabbi Yosi. Maybe the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi. Answers the Gemara, no. Shani Yerusha haba me'aleha. When it's an inheritance, yes, an embryo could get an inheritance because it comes by itself. You didn't have to transfer it. It's an automatic thing. But our Mishnah is discussing specifically when a person commits to give a mana to an embryo. That needs a transfer. You need a transfer of deed. It doesn't happen automatic. So who is the author of a Mishnah? So the Gemara says, let us say, the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yochanan ben Broiki. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broiki says, the Amma loishna rushav loishamatana. You can gift your kid or inherit your kid. The time we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broiki oimer, im Omar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broiki says, if a man says he has 5 sons, and he says, this one son, I'm giving all my assets to this one son. And maybe Rabbi Yochanan ben Broiki says it works. You can give your whole estate to one son and disinherit the other kids, basically. And this opinion, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, may have been said that even if your wife is pregnant, you can gift all your assets to the wife that's pregnant, to the kid, to the embryo. If you say to a kid that could inherit you, that you should get all my assets, the of Kayamin, it's an effective. So the Gemara says, no, the Davish Yeshna B'Yolam. The Davish Eina B'Olam Mi Amar. When did Rabbi Yochanan say you can do that, disinherit the rest of your kids? If you give it to one kid that's alive, but if it's not here, if it's just an embryo, who said you can transfer your assets to that one kid that wasn't born yet? Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka cannot be the author of our Mishnah. So v'lei malei, let us say Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka v'savalak Rabbi Yossi. Maybe it's both. Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, who holds you can transfer your assets to a kid, and he also holds like Rabbi Yossi that it could be that an embryo could acquire something. Even though Rabbi Yossi limited it only by inheritance, maybe Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka extended that and said by gift also you can give something to an embryo. And said Gemara, how do you know? Maybe Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka is only in the opinion you can gift something only to a live child, but not to an embryo. So basically, the Gemara is trying to find out our strange part of our Mishnah. Mishnah said at the end, Im Amma, if a person says, if my wife gives birth to a boy, that boy should take a mana, $100. So if the wife gave birth to a boy, the child takes $100. Why? Because you committed so, but you committed to an embryo, and an embryo is something that's not in this world. It wasn't born yet. So how could you transfer ownership? How could you commit something to an embryo? How could you be obligated if you can't gift something to something to a child that wasn't born yet? So we're still going to try to figure out who the author of our Mishnah is. And Rav Huna says, I don't know who the author of our Mishnah is. We're still going to deal with that tomorrow, B'ez Hashem. Okay, we'll stop over here.